Indian polity is an important subject for anyone attempting the UPSC Civil Services examination at the prelims as well as the mains level and even for the interview. We all know that. There are many books on the subject. So why should Spectrum's Indian polity make a difference? Here are some features of the book that could make a vital and positive impact on your preparation. The book discusses the constitutional framework which is necessary for the prelims and mains, and also focuses on topical issues relating to the political system which is relevant for the mains and the interview. Divided into 37 chapters, the book discusses political systems, governments, and constitutions and goes on to discuss the Indian Constitution systematically. It covers the historical perspective and gives a brief analysis of the British legacy in governance before going on to the framing of the Constitution and its salient features. Little known details relating to the subject are included, such as the names of women members of the Constituent Assembly and how decisions were arrived at. The parts and chapters of the Constitution are considered in a logical order indeed, in more or less the same order as in the official document, so that the reader can make easy references. Every provision of the Constitution is discussed with a reference to its article and clause, so that readers may link the article number with the subject matter of the provision concerned immediately and not refer to a separate table or chart. The provision is better understood this way. Changes made by various amendments and critical comments on the provisions are included in context to widen the reader's perspective. This is evident in the chapter on fundamental rights. The chapter on directive principles of state policy surveys the principles in the context of their importance in a welfare state, but also discusses how some of them came to be implemented through amendments or normal laws, along with critical comments on their implementation and significance. The same is found in the chapter on fundamental duties. Supreme Court judgments are included in their contexts. In the chapter on fundamental rights, court judgments that explain the implications of the freedom of speech and expression are highlighted. Supreme Court judgments expanding the right to life are also pointed out. Court interventions have been highlighted in other chapters too. Interesting details, for example, the doctrines of eclipse and severability, the meaning of cabinet and kitchen cabinet, the appointment and role of pro-team speaker, the meaning of collective, individual, and legal responsibility of the ministers are explained and highlighted to catch attention and enable recall. The extensive but integrative chapter on the judiciary has sections on the Supreme Court, the High Court, subordinate courts, tribunals, family courts, lok adalats, and legal aid, etc. A chart explains the single judicial system in India. In the chapters on elections and election laws and reforms, the election methods, the powers of the Election Commission, its composition as it evolved over time, and how it should be more empowered are some of the points discussed. Recent reforms have not only been enumerated, but critical views on their worth have been included. Political parties and their evolution are also discussed, along with the shortcomings of the party system in India. Comparative glimpses of world constitutions are included in various contexts. This is not to be found in many other similar books. A few examples: the different kinds of federal systems in various countries, the comparison of impeachment of the presidents in the US and India, the differences between parliamentary systems in the UK and India, the difference between the speakers in Indian and British parliaments, the difference between the Indian and US Supreme Courts. There is a chapter on separation of powers along with the comparison between India and other democracies in this aspect. The chapter on statutory and quasi-judicial bodies explains these terms and how they differ from constitutional bodies. The constitutional bodies are more appropriately discussed in the context of the constitutional provisions. Here, some of the important statutory bodies in India are considered. The comparison of various institutions and procedures are highlighted in boxes to help readers understand and retain important facts. Parliamentary and presidential governments are compared, as are directive principles and fundamental rights, powers of the president and the governor, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, ordinary and money bills, the jurisdictions of the Supreme Court and the High Courts, to give some examples. A unique feature that distinguishes this book from other books of this kind is the discussion of topical issues at the end of most chapters. These topics have been selected with care, some of them reflecting current importance and interest. The discussion will help readers understand a constitutional provision in the light of its practice and form opinions on various issues. They will be most useful in tackling questions in the mains paper or at the interview. Some examples: a discussion on whether the Constituent Assembly was sovereign in Chapter 3. The informative discussion after Chapter 4 on whether the preamble is a part of the Constitution. Topics such as the amendability of fundamental rights and the issue of right to property and how useful are the fundamental rights at the end of Chapter 7. A critical discussion on coalition governments, veto and ordinance-making powers of the President at the end of Chapter 10. The status of the Indian Parliament at the end of Chapter 11. The controversies relating to the role of the Governor in Chapter 13. Several topics after the chapter on judiciary, such as appointment and accountability of judges and RTI, delayed justice and judicial activism. At the end of the chapter on federalism, there is a discussion of cooperative and competitive federalism and the growth of regionalism. After Chapter 23, items that ought to interest prospective civil servants on civil service reforms and lateral entry. The chapter on elections, electoral laws, and electoral reforms discuss a variety of topics such as the EVM controversy, electoral systems, voting behavior in India, issues of compulsory voting, recall and referendum, election funding. Appendices provide relevant information such as the High Courts and their jurisdictions, the list of office holders in the Indian government, the country's national symbols, and so on. In this year's, that is, the revised edition of 2022, content has been updated till mid-March 2022. Recent issues such as changes in Jammu and Kashmir and latest constitutional amendments, Election Laws Amendment 2021, and the Supreme Court's decision on the 97th Constitutional Amendment are covered. All in all, a comprehensive but precise coverage of Indian polity and political system. It would serve the discerning student who wants to gain that vital edge over competitors.